previous principal every single time. And that's where some people forget to do. And then we looked at a couple of charts to figure out compound interest. And why they made the charts was that because they just wanted to make the process easier. Because if you had, for instance, 40 different periods involving compound interest, you could do it with using the formula, but it'd just take you forever. So they came up with the actual little charts that we use on our homework. You'll have to use those again when we take the quiz. So today we talk about checking accounts. How many people have a checking account? Okay. So what's the difference between the two? On what? On what? Well, yeah, on money, but which one has better interest rates? Savings, right? Most of the time on your checking account, you probably don't have much, if any, interest. If you have any interest on checking, it's a really, really good deal. Okay, but it's going to have to be a special situation. So checking would be usually the money that you have on hand and that you would use probably the most often, right? And it's probably tied to your debit card. Okay? So when you do this, I believe this section they talk mostly about looking at it with the respect that there's not the debit card yet. So most of you probably don't do a whole lot of what we're going to talk about in this section, because how many people write checks? Anybody in here? Okay. So why would I write a check? I write a check for certain bills, and it comes through this process, or it comes through this checking account also. But you guys are probably mostly using this through your debit card. And I don't think they actually include that in this part. But when you turn to page 88. How about deposits? How many people deposit into this account manually? Do you take your money to the bank and do this?
You do, but I got check stuff.
Okay, so you had a checking deposit, right? So this is a really old one because this is from Iowa, Nebraska State Bank. So this is when I lived in Sioux City yet. But this would be kind of what you would use as an example of to make a deposit, okay? And the same thing is shown here on page 88. When you start looking at this, obviously it shows the date. On mine it says deposits may not be available for immediate withdrawal. Why would that be the case? Why would my money not necessarily be ready for me to turn around and withdraw it? Any idea?
They give it out.
Okay, maybe. They might have to just wait for it to be processed. It might be like on the morning of a holiday, or it might be at the end of a Friday afternoon, and they probably don't do a whole lot of business over the weekends. Okay, so just make sure that if you're going to deposit, you understand all that good stuff. So if you, again, look on page 88, they're showing you all the categories that it could be. Obviously, it shows the person's name and everything. On the bottom, way at the bottom, you see the numbers. What do those numbers mean? In this example, it would have been below the Apex National Bank, and it said 021307630. Any idea what those numbers are? Okay. What else? Nope. So your account number is probably the end numbers. The 123 and whatever it is, 9248. So what do you think those first numbers actually mean? So your account number is shown on this, but what is that first group of numbers? Good guess.
The account it's coming from?
Kind of.
Is it the
What? The bank's number, exactly right. So each bank has its own number too. So that would be the bank and then what your account would be. Because remember, I'm probably taking this to my own bank, right? Because this is me depositing money into my account. So this big long number right at the beginning is my bank's number, and then this would have been my individual account number. Okay? So these would have been personalized ones. There could be generic ones. If you have generic ones from your bank, you would have to know what that number is. They would have this supplied on those generic ones, but you would have to know your account.
That's your own bank?
Your own bank, yes. Okay. So then notice, on the right-hand side, obviously cash, this means what I'm putting in there. Actual dollar bills or coins. Then when it says list checks singly, I didn't know that was a word. Anyway, singly, we're listing all of the checks that you have gotten. Now back in the day, this was probably used a lot more than now, because you guys probably don't even get a whole lot of checks yourself, right? Are you direct deposit from your work?
Yeah.
Anybody get a check anymore?
I do.
From?
Get mine from
Okay. Jerry still pays with checks?
the turnaround.
What?
The turnaround?
Okay. So everybody, there's still some places. So if you had multiple little jobs or something, or you got a check then, maybe it was your birthday, and people sent you checks, you could list them all. If you had more than 3, you would turn it over to the backside, and you can list some more. All right? This would be this would have been a little bigger situation of when businesses used to take a lot of checks. You could go through and list a bunch of checks. So when I ran the restaurant in Sioux City, we would use those, and we would have to list all of them. But we cut the corners by just adding all of our checks together and just doing one. That's how our bank allowed us to do it. Okay? So if you keep reading down, it says subtotal and then less cash received. What the heck's that mean? What's less cash received?
The least amount. The smallest check.
What?
The cash won't back.
Perfect. So, for instance, I had 5 checks, and I didn't want it all to go into my bank account. I wanted some money for this weekend, because we're going out of town. So less cash received would be, I want $250. And they would give that back to me. So obviously, you probably didn't have actual cash going in. You're just getting cash coming out. And so the subtotal up here would have been adding all that together minus what you're going to actually come back with. And then your grand total would have been down here. That makes sense to everybody? Okay. So this is just an example of my check deposit. So we'll go through a couple of those. From there, then they talk about a check register. Everybody understand what that is? A check register would be some kind of way of me going through every single transaction and writing down whether it was a credit or a debit to my account. If it is a credit, I'm putting money into my account. If it's a debit, I'm taking stuff out. I'm paying bills. I'm using it at the gas station, whatever it happens to be. Okay? So an example of this would be on the bottom of page 89. See on the left-hand side where it says payment or credits, and then they went through, I can't even read what it says, Omnistat, and then their electric bill, their mortgage, and some kind of appliance. And then they had debits of Sherry's paycheck and Jamal's paycheck, or something like that. So this is just a running total in a sense that you would do. How many of you do this? None of you do this? You just hope and pray to God that you have money in there?
Basically.
Oh. Fair enough. Okay, so you guys are like my sister. She just wants to know that there's money there. She doesn't care how much. She just wants to know that I can spend it. And the opposite version of that is me and my mom. We want to know how much to the penny that it is. So every month I get a statement that I go through and I check off everything. And I want it down to the penny to know how much I have. So it's a different version. Totally, I guess, okay, as long as you're okay with not really knowing how much money you have in there. All right? But we're actually going to go through this process of showing you how to do this in this section. Okay? So, we'll talk about those couple things and what your balance is. And then in the next part, they talk about if you had overdrawn things or if you had some penalties. If you're overdrawn, what's that mean?
Overdrawn?
If you're overdrawn on your account, that's for all of you that don't.
You're in the hole.
Yeah, you're in the negative. So that's for all of you that don't do what the register was doing on page 89. So none of you raised your hand. You could eventually run into the situation where you're overdrawn. You just kept writing checks or using your debit card and kept buying stuff, and then all of a sudden at Walmart it says what? Excuse me, ma'am, you're denied. Right? Okay?
Insufficient funds.
Insufficient funds, exactly right. So then you're overdrawn, and on top of you having to pay that back, you probably have to pay a penalty at the bank. Right? I don't even know what it is. I've never been
Mine was
there.
like
How much?
I think it was like $10.
$10.
What do
Okay.
I have to pay that?
That was -4.
You have to pay what?
A penalty, why?
Because you want.
Because the bank has to basically cover for you until you get money into there.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Yeah, don't
Okay.
remember.
Like
So,
statements on my phone.
okay, so you get statements, and they tell you.
Yeah.
Do you have like a limit, or do they really?
Daily limit on dollars.
Okay, yeah, daily limit that way, but do you have a minimum balance when they send you something? No?
Mine just puts, if I go negative, they just put $10 in for me. They don't like charge me anything.
What?
Yeah.
I got charged.
Who just
$10.
gives you $10?
From my other account.
Oh, okay,
Savings.
okay.
Oh.
That could be true too, as long as you're tied together.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna keep overdrawn, I'll get free money.
No.
That's what you meant.
That's what it sounds, yeah, that's the way she kind of made it sound. Right. Okay, so, those of you that don't like to keep this running total, you might want to go into your alerts and say, well, once I get to $50, send me a text, so you don't do your overdraw again.
You think I have $50? No.
So when you look over like what you have to the exact penny, you look at like what you spent and how much they should have taken out, and if they don't, like,
Oh, yeah,
you make sure they equal out.
oh, yeah.
What if they don't? What if they scam you? What if you get bamboozled?
Well, then you gotta start calling people.
You gotta start making phone calls?
Yeah,
Federal government, you took like 2 extra pennies on one bag.
well, if you really want it, yes, without a doubt.
Have you ever had to start making phone calls, Mr. Gifford?
I've made phone calls because I didn't understand it, yeah, absolutely.
Why are you taking this?
You know, unfortunately, you start going to college and you have a night out on the town and you might ran that debit card more than once. You might not remember exactly when and where you ran that debit card.
Have you had those moments?
Had those moments. Good.
That's why you just gotta put the debit card away, it's pretty cash.
Well,
Run out, you're out!
Okay.
You run out of cash, and then you have to use your card, and you don't know how much is on your card, so you're just like, well, I hope this works.
I never heard.
I hope this works.
All right. So let's look at page 89. Page 89.
Me.
So you're going to try to figure out how much money you're going to deposit. So you'll have to do this on the quiz.
Oh,
So letter A, Shirley deposited these items into her account at a bank. The bills she had were 14 20s, 21 quarters, 6 dimes, and she had 2 checks. She received $101 bills in cash back. What was the amount of Shirley's deposit?
Oh, surely.
So, I'm not making assumptions about Shirley or anything. But hopefully she's running dollars. So,
She's an accountant.
how much money is she going to put in? So, 14 20s, what do I gotta do? 14 times 20 plus, how much is 21 quarters?
21.
$5.25? Okay, so how much did you have for the 20s?
2,800.
Plus $5.25 plus 60 cents, right? Then add your 2 checks. And what do I do with the $100?
Yeah. You deducted.
Subtract.
You subtract it. So what's your grand total?
What? 569.64.
Nice.
Surely.
Anybody else?
That's what I got.
5,130.
What?
No.
Jeez.
What did you say for the first one?
2,800.
Yeah, your first one's way too much. 14 times 2 is 28.
It's 280.
So you would add
What's
$280.
Donald? What is wrong with you? What is the answer?
What did you get?
I don't know.
What did you get?
I don't know.
Yeah. $510.24.
Whoa, I got 515.
Do we need to write it on the board?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we're okay.
Donald, I don't know what you do, but you need to figure out how to run a calculator. I'm not gonna lie to you, because your calculator skills are below par.
Not me. Below par.
14 times 20,
280.
quarters.
525.
He's
60
probably
cents and nines.
Yeah,
He's definitely in a track or somewhere.
no, he's on a college visit.
He's probably as high
Oh, it's
as.
22,
Yeah.
not 27, that's what I did.
He texted me last night at like midnight and he's like, did you take anything to your college visit?
So we're doing all of this, ladies and gentlemen, please concentrate here. And then we're subtracting 100 at the end.
Yes, that's what I did.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, we
dollars.
need to go back to,
That's
that's
okay.
not very fast.
Quiet.
Donald, do you know what you're
All right.
Oh,
Evidently, some of you need to try letter B. So try it out.
Oh, man. You so close.
It's 510. That's what it was.
How do we do?
I'm not the one.
No. So there's 659.
Sounds good to me, Trent.
650.
This is.
659.
Let me read it down.
Yes. Let's go.
Wait, what was the answer?
Let's go.
What did you get?
659.14.
Got that calculator.
Why did I get that?
Donald, did you get it this time?
I did.
659.
Charles Gray did
Wait,
not take
yeah.
out $181.
Check it. No, you just put in my hands.
He was good.
Wait, what is the answer?
659.14. Miss Overdraw is still working here.
I don't even know how you do
I didn't know either.
that. You just do it. It's not
It
like you
just
plan
happens.
for it. It's just like, oh, well. Didn't work out for me. How did you run that low?
Because some people only get
Clothes are
$40
expensive,
every
Donald.
2 weeks in their checking account and have to pay for the gas.
Is that still wrong?
Casey's.
What'd you get, Timbers?
Immediately.
6 what?
$6.59.
Right.
I got
If you
59.
have like $20 and
But you don't.
don't.
You don't.
You're
You
right.
don't take it
I had
out.
Right.
What am I doing
Are
wrong?
these the one, this right here?
Oh, one job.
17 times 20. 340.
Up
18
baby.
times 180.
10, 5, 45,
I
37.
didn't really
Where's your
feel like-
37?
What
You're
places
doing it
work
today?
best?
Oh, where did I?
Yeah, see, that would have been perfect. All right. So besides the calculator part, you can get the adding it up. You gotta go real slow. Page 90. Now we're going to do a little of this check register stuff. So if you don't do this, this is what you would start to do, I guess. Okay? So Edwina's check register showed a previous balance of $25.83 at the beginning of the week. Everybody understand what that means?
Yeah.
That's what she has in there at the beginning of the week. Okay? So, if you would do this, notice here, you would have a section right here, and then a little section here, a little section here, and then probably a little bigger one here, because this is my balance. The balance is going to be your running total that you have in there at all times. So this is, no offense to Molly, but what you would want to start to do. Okay? So every time that she did something with her card or paid a bill, this is where it gets a little sticky because you could have like automatic things. So like my cell phone bill is just automatically withdrawn. My now electric bill is just automatically withdrawn. So you would have to have some way of setting that up where you get a notification that your bill was taken out. You know what I'm saying? So you know that when that happened. But this balance is going to be your running total. And so Molly's would be negative because she doesn't have any money. The rest of us have money. Okay? But she's still spending, so her negatives are getting bigger, which isn't a good thing. Okay? So, during the week, she made a deposit of $12.20. So again, this would be credits, or maybe they do it debits and then credits. Yeah, sorry. This would be debits. This would be credits. How I would remember this, debits are minus, credits are plus. So a credit is me getting paid, my paycheck. Grandpa and Grandma send me some money. That's a credit. That's a good thing, okay? And then over here is, they call it transactions. So this is what you did. Okay, so, you went to Walmart. You went to Shields. You went to the gas station. You went to wherever. Okay? So what does it say? She got a deposit. So a lot of times you can do this however you want. You can be as specific as you want. You can be as generalized as you want. I would just say deposit. I don't care what the deposit was from. All right? And then it was what? 12.20 something? Just 12.20? Okay? So, am I going to add to my balance or subtract? I'm going to add. So, over here, I would just keep my running total. So, we have 3, 10, 7, 8, 38.03. Right? Okay, next one. Keep reading. What's it say?
Road check.
She wrote a check. Okay, so how much was the check?
$8.25.
$8.25?
Yeah.
First one.
Does it tell you the check number? Okay, so does it tell you where it went? So again, on a normal transaction sheet, they would have another thing over here maybe two more. One would be the date. One would be a check number. Okay, so again, you can make your own registry too. That's what I do now. You can get them in these little books, but they are kind of hard to write on because they're so small. Did they tell you when it was deposited in the first place? On that first one? Okay, so normally you would have a date then too. when all this happened. So your first check, we would just now say a check for $288.25. What else?
96.40.
$96.40. Another check.
1278.
Another check.
That's it.
Okay. Anything else? All right. So each one of these we're going to what? Subtract, right? So 45, 5, I don't know, 13 minus 5 is 8, 9 minus 2 is 7, 8 minus 7, or sorry, 17 minus 8 is 29.78. 8 minus 6 is 2, 7 minus 9 is 18, 8, 2, and 12.78. 15 minus 8 is 7, 9 minus 7 is 2, 11 minus 2 is 9, 7 minus 6, 8, 2. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so this would be my register. So you'd have a piece of paper or the little book right with your stuff, and you would just keep this running total. This always tells Molly that how much money she has. She has $2,800.
Definitely don't have
$2,000
in
So, on D, we don't have to go through the whole thing, but just let's talk about it. Alex Devine made deposits of, so 500 and 1236, we're gonna do what? Add, and then wrote checks for, we would subtract all that stuff. So again, if you looked at it, it would, this one could be honestly getting Molly in trouble, right? Because if that first check was written before she deposited, she would be what? She'd be minus, right? Now what you gotta remember is this. She's gonna write that check, but is that check automatically gonna go through? No, right? So it first has to get to that company, which could, if she sends it in the mail, especially nowadays, could take a couple extra days. So that's the other thing that you gotta be kind of conscious of, is that how long is this gonna take for me to get it to my whatever, so I don't fall behind. My electric bill, for instance. I don't want my heat to get turned off. I want to have an air conditioner during the summertime. So I got to make sure that there's a leeway for that check getting lost or something. And this is where Easton said, well, you would actually go through and check that off? Yeah, because a couple years ago I sent my golf dues in, and that check got lost. So I had it deducted, but it never went through the system. So obviously mine was off from what the bank said, my $1,000 or whatever, because of the golf dues not going through the whole process. So again, this is totally, I guess, do you care, kind of thing. Obviously in here you guys aren't too worried about it. One, because mom and dad or somebody's probably going to help you bail you out. But here shortly, you could be turned out to your own selves. So now you're responsible for that. And why is that important? Because we'll sooner or later talk about your credit score. If you continually go underneath your minimum or have overdrawn statements, your credit's going to plummet, and some of the things that you want to do might not be possible. Meaning if you want to try to buy a house and get a loan, or just get a loan for something else. If you have a history of spending more money than you have, then your credit's going to be really, really bad, and you might not be able to do some of those things. So you just got to keep that in the back of your mind. Okay? So, any questions with any of this stuff? I myself would recommend you starting to do this, but again,
But what if we can just go on the app on our phone and just look?
that's fine. And how many times do you do that?
A lot, actually.
Okay.
I just look at it.
That's how I knew I went under.
I just look at my account. If I'm not under, then I'm fine.
Yeah.
But you don't really care. So somebody could be taking $100 out of your account.
Well, I would
I
notice
don't even have
that.
$100 on
I
my
know
card.
that, like, I have subscriptions on it,
If
like,
you
like
take $2
my Netflix or like,
You pay for
Disney
that.
Plus. $20 for that.
Okay, so those are, I mean, that's totally up to you guys. Okay, do you get something in the mail or a statement?
Yes.
Do you get it in the mail or is it just on your phone or whatever?
I get mine in the mail. I
Yeah.
don't really know what it is though.
Email statements.
Can you look at your statements on like your banking app?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. But you have to have it probably set up that way.
On your what?
I don't know, your banking app?
See, I don't think I can. I don't.
Yeah, you can, Tiffany, you get an email
I do?
when you get us.
Yeah, they say your statement is good.
I can see everything that I've.
See, I don't think
Ever
my
saw it
bank
on my
account
card.
is set up with my
Right.
email though.
Right.
Yeah.
It's probably set up with my mom's email.
It could be. So especially right now, you might not have some of these capabilities just because of your age too. If you haven't turned 18 yet.
I try to apply for like credit card just to get my
Yep,
credit score up, but I have to be in college or something.
yep,
What?
absolutely.
Are we gonna talk about credit score?
Yes, we
Okay,
will.
good.
The Colbecks have, credit cards?